Some mysteries take years to crack, but others remain unsolved for decades, leaving families desperate for answers and investigators haunted by unfinished business. With the advancement of forensic science, new witness testimonies, and sheer luck, many cases that seemed destined to remain cold have finally found resolution. Here are 6 shocking cases that were solved long after they first occurred. Let's dive in. The Golden State Killer. Between 1974 and 1986, California was terrorized by a serial killer and rapist known as the Golden State Killer. He committed at least 13 murders, over 50 rapes, and more than 100 burglaries across the state. For decades, the case baffled authorities, and with no clear suspect, it went cold. In 2018, investigators used a groundbreaking DNA technique known as genetic genealogy. By tracing familial DNA from genealogy websites, they identified Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer, as the killer. After evading justice for over 40 years, DeAngelo was arrested and later pleaded guilty, finally bringing closure to his victims' families. The case set a new precedent for using DNA databases in criminal investigations. Despite decades passing, science has proved that justice can still be served. But this isn't the only case where patience and technology turned the tide. The murder of Carla Walker. In 1974, Carla Walker, a 17-year-old high school student from Texas, was abducted from her boyfriend's car outside a bowling alley. Days later, her body was found in a ditch. She had been brutally assaulted and strangled. Despite numerous efforts, the case remained unsolved for nearly 5 decades. In 2020, DNA testing provided a breakthrough. Advanced forensic technology helped link suspect Glenn McCurley to the crime. McCurley had been questioned in the initial investigation, but lacked sufficient evidence against him at the time. With new DNA results, authorities confronted him, and he confessed. Justice was finally served after 46 years, proving that no killer can hide forever. Just when it seemed like Carla's case would never see closure, science and persistence changed everything. But some cases take even longer to crack, leaving families with unanswered questions for generations. The Boy in the Box. One of America's most haunting cold cases involved an unidentified boy found dead in a cardboard box in Philadelphia in 1957. The case, known as the Boy in the Box, gripped the nation, with police and amateur detectives searching for answers for decades. In 2022, a DNA breakthrough finally revealed his identity: Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was 4 years old at the time of his death. While the exact details of his murder remain unclear, investigators hope that this identification will lead to further revelations about who was responsible. His remaining family members now have answers that had eluded them for over 65 years. The Boy in the Box finally had a name, but mysteries still surround his tragic fate. However, some cases remain in limbo even when new evidence surfaces, until the right moment arrives. The disappearance of Melanie Melanson. In 1989, 14-year-old Melanie Melanson vanished after attending a party in Woburn, Massachusetts. Friends claimed she was last seen walking away with 2 men, but no trace of her was ever found. Despite repeated searches and renewed investigations, the case remained cold for 3 decades. In 2019, new information surfaced, leading investigators to a wooded area where human remains were found. Advances in forensic anthropology confirmed they belonged to Melanie. While her death was ruled a homicide, the exact circumstances remain under investigation. However, after 30 years, her family finally got the confirmation they needed. Melanie had been found. Decades of waiting ended with heartbreaking answers, but at least Melanie's family could lay her to rest. Still, some cases linger for even longer, waiting for science to catch up with justice. The murder of Rita Ellis. In 1967, 19-year-old Rita Ellis was brutally murdered near an Air Force base in England. Despite an extensive investigation, no suspect was identified, and the case faded into obscurity over the decades. In 2022, thanks to advances in forensic science, authorities used a technique called DNA phenotyping to create a profile of the killer. This led them to a man who had been on their radar decades earlier, but had never been arrested. The suspect, who had since passed away, was definitively linked to the crime through DNA evidence. While he escaped justice in his lifetime, the case was finally closed, bringing long-awaited answers to Rita's loved ones. Though justice came too late for prosecution, it served as a warning that no crime is truly forgotten. Science and determination continue to bring long-overdue justice, proving that cold cases can always be solved. Even as Rita's case was finally closed, another long unsolved mystery was nearing its breakthrough, one that would take nearly 6 decades to reach its resolution. The murder of Maurice Civarella. On March 18, 1964, 9-year-old Maurice Civarella was abducted while walking to school in Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Hours later, her body was found in a coal mining pit. She had been assaulted and strangled. Investigators gathered evidence but were unable to identify her killer, leaving the case unsolved for nearly 6 decades. In 2022, forensic genealogy helped match DNA found at the crime scene to James Paul Fort, a man with a history of violent crimes. Forte had died in 1980, but his remains were exhumed to confirm the DNA match. While he never faced justice, authorities finally provided Maurice's family with the answers they had sought for 58 years. Even after almost 6 decades, justice found its way to Maurice's case. With forensic advancements evolving every day, more cold cases may soon find their long-awaited conclusions. Cold cases can be frustrating, heartbreaking, and sometimes seem impossible to solve. But these cases prove that time, science, and determination can bring justice even after decades. The message is clear: no case is ever truly closed. Which of these cases shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.